All right, everybody, welcome to our next segment, which is going to be discussing the world race. And I thought, who else to bring on but two people who have been very involved in the world race, especially recently, and they both have achieved their own victories in the world race, the Final Fantasy XIV one, that is. So let me go ahead and quickly introduce the people we have on. We have Sfia and Layla. Sfia, if you wouldn't mind going first, just tell everybody who you are.
You just introduced me. I'm Sfia. I am a caster main, have been world progging for just over 4 years now, on Gilgamesh server, currently with Radiance Team TPS.
Nice. And then Layla?
Yeah, I've been around since 2.0, rating in the game. I haven't been around actually for over a tier now, but I just can't get enough of Final Fantasy prog at all times in my life, so I just keep latching onto it.
Yeah.
And I'm also here to simp for Sfia.
I love your picture, by the way. I'm assuming you had that commissioned.
Yeah, it was commissioned by one Baron.
Okay. Talented artist. I know very much about... I've had very many conversations about her. And she does seem like she's into fan fiction between you and me.
Yeah, did you know that she's written a fan fiction about you and me?
I don't know if that's true, but I wouldn't be surprised. Okay.
No, it's true.
Is it a safe for MogTalk type of fanfiction? I'm going to assume no.
It depends what direction Frosty wants to go with MogTalk, you know.
I want it to stay, able to stream next week. So that would be good if...
Probably not, then.
Okay.
We might have to change the website.
You have a web... What?
We might have to move it over to a different stream.
Oh, you mean a different
service.
I mean, there's a couple of choices there. I mean, OnlyFans has been pretty popular recently, but... Anyways, thank you guys for coming on to this show. I really appreciate it. You both, again, have been part of MogTalk, as a lot of the guests have, for a very long time, and it makes me happy that I could get you on to talk about something that is close to me, because the world race has been, as you guys know, a pretty big part of my life, since at least about Midas. Midas is around the time that I started to get interested in and start picking up with everything. And now we haven't really had a race in a very long time.
Is this the longest time that we've had no...
I think between expansions, maybe? Yeah.
Probably getting close to that time, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there hasn't been a drought like this, I feel like, just specifically because in previous times where there was droughts, they had the content unlocked, typically. Mm-hmm. But even with without the content unlocked right now, it's got to be the longest, or at least going to be the longest.
Yeah. Because, there was no ultimate in between patches or anything. And so, funny enough, I think it was, 4.5, we had BA. That technically had some sort of race to it. It wasn't something that was really monitored, but it had something, right?
That was essentially a prog experience again, just something that nobody really expected out of it.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
So, between that and the first Edenscape, or, the Eden universe of raids, what was that, like a year? No, actually, that was only like 9 months, right?
Since when and when?
A BA and the first raid of this expansion.
7, 8?
Yeah, thereabouts.
I think that was the longest, because everybody, I like to include BA in some way, because there was a first in the world of BA that we know of, and that was something that we were able to declare. It wasn't exactly the same as the world race, but it was something that we could all participate in and have fun with, and I don't know if they're going to do something like that again with the next relic. I assume
they are. They've already said there's going to be a BA equivalent in 5.4, I think.
Is there?
Yes.
5.4 seems a horrible time to do it, because that's when...
it would probably be a little bit like a 5.45 or something like that.
Okay.
But they've said there's another BA coming, so we're looking forward to that.
I'm wondering how that's going to work out race-wise, now that people have kind of expectations of some sort. Are people actually going to try to get together, like,
absolutely.
Data center?
I know that a whole bunch of people in my FC are all going to be grinding that out, so it'll be fun.
There was a lot of FOMO from the last Eureka content drop. People who were behind in Eureka were really bummed that they couldn't participate in
That's
the
true.
Baldesian Arsenal. So I would expect even a bigger turnout for the next public dungeon event that they do.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes sense. I'll see how it works out. I mean, I'm not going to track it. I don't have the energy.
Because you're going to participate.
I'm going to participate. I'll be in the world first for that. I need to do it at some point, right?
Also, tracking it's really easy because you can just watch the 2 streams because there's so many people all in one stream.
I'll rank data centers, right? Is that what we'll do? We'll just rank the data centers.
That's essentially what it was last time. It was us and a JP group that were going, and like they'd do a pull and we'd watch it, and then we'd do a pull because it took like an hour to get back in there after wiping,
right?
Or longer. So it was very easy to monitor.
Yeah. Well, on that note too, I'm still going to be tracking races and stuff and everything, but I think I'm going to be treating it a little bit differently. I don't know, because developing a website seems a little bit overwhelming at this point after all my experience and everything. So if we can get someone in there to actually work on that website, maybe we'll do it. But I think I'll still keep it kind of loose based and nothing too hardcore. Because originally, Layla, we even talked about it a bit. Is that the envision was to make this awesome raid site that people would have logins in and people could track and have, trophies on the website and everything else. But I don't know, man.
Well, I mean,
a lot of work.
The sky is the limit for what you do want to do. I mean,
it's true.
Like, I wouldn't sell yourself short there. Now, I think it's always going to be an uphill battle just because of the limitations that Square Enix is giving you.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have something you can directly pull from to kind of get that information. So you have to do everything manually.
But the thing is, if there was something that you could directly pull from, I guarantee you somebody would make that in a heartbeat and do it better than I could do it. So
I don't know.
I mean, I could participate and help them. But
I think you got the pulse on the prog community right now. So I don't know if an outlier coming in would understand it as well.
Yeah. And I was thinking about having someone else start to work on the website, but like it's such a weird experience to like trust anyone to like take over, because
it's like your passion project.
Yeah. It is. And then also, I try to place myself as a neutral person as much as I can within the community, because I believe that's the best way to handle it. But there's so much background drama between so many different people, so if I like ask one person to do it, I'm like, this will be great. They'll do it, then I find out half the community hates them and I had no clue at all why, and then they will never use the website because they don't trust this person, and then I find out why, and then it's all, I don't know.
Well, outside of the website then, what are your plans for the next race? So, having experienced what happened in the last race,
I think this is going to be an interesting situation.
That's a really good segue.
Yeah, because what I think I do have
talking about outliers coming in.
Yeah. I think that it would be interesting to do a streamed base event where we track people, but we're going to do it differently than we did with Method, because I wasn't very happy with how that all went down. While they did bring a lot of technical stuff and things that I think were pretty cool, it just it wasn't the right fit with how it was handled in the community and everything else.
They weren't in tune with how Final Fantasy Prog operates, how the people in the community operate. It was very jarring and disorganized.
Yeah,
that's why we weren't a part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes sense, especially when you have no clue. Half the people have to do research to find out if people are legitimate when they're asking you about it, right? Which was just, it was a weird situation. With that, however, said, it will probably be less production and more quality towards what people are doing with the race. For example, I think one of the big things with the Method race is that they all had to stream directly to Method server. And
which
go ahead.
was cool, but I mean, it also caused a bunch of headache for the actual streamers themselves, the people participating, if you remember.
Mm-hmm. It did. They had to purchase a program. They didn't have to. That was the thing. They were never required to purchase this program. But if they wanted to be both on a Method stream and have a stream themselves going, they had to have a dual stream setup going where they could stream to the Method server plus stream to Twitch or wherever else they were going. And that was just not a comfortable setup. And it wasn't told to anyone until 24 hours beforehand?
I think that was the problem, right? It was just communication blackout on that front until 2 days prior.
Yeah.
I think with like 2 weeks of notice, I think people could have been a lot more comfortable with it.
Yeah. My thought process would be just let people do what they do. Don't do anything that gets involved with what they do naturally already. So if they are part of the race and they stream, they don't have to do anything else. They just do them, and we just grab their stream and we'll stream it. We'll be a few seconds behind. It might be a little bit less quality of a stream and everything else, but I'm not fucking with the racer. And I think that's the thing that I want to do, is make it to where if people were going to participate in something like that and allow me to restream their streams, they weren't having any negative effect from it.
People shouldn't feel like there's extremities outside of the choice to stream that they're having to compromise for when they're joining the broadcast, you know?
Yeah.
With the previous one, there was a lot of things that I think the people participating in the broadcast had to compromise for. I mean, I remember just even the audio discussion of being able to stream, you know, comms and stuff. That was a big topic of contention. And it's like, I mean, this isn't really what they signed up for, you know?
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, because, I mean, Klops will attest to this, but when you're actually progging, you are so, like, laser focused and tunnel vision on what you're doing that any outside distraction is just, it's only going to be bad.
You shouldn't have to think about anything other than what you're doing with your group. Everything else should just be handled completely external, and you know, the event adapts to the streamer, not the streamer adapts to the event.
Yeah,
that's my opinion.
No, and I agree. And you know, Method was just trying to provide content for something that they were going and trying to make a more 24/7 channel. They were trying to be more of a media outlet and everything else. And of course, all the other stuff happened with them, and so it's a whole different deal. But that being said, the Final Fantasy XIV community, what they did provide to us is some production value with people doing technical work and everything else and making nice graphics. But that's about it. And money. I mean, they had some money to offer to people to be a part of it in some way, but not to the people who are racing, of course. The people who are the main content of it. You also have the people who are the commentators, and it wasn't like given billions of dollars, but it was enough to say, all right, if I did this, it wouldn't be horrible. I'm not losing money by doing this.
Yeah. I think probably the biggest thing that they provided was actually showing that people want that sort of format and that broadcast for Final Fantasy World Prog, because it was pretty widely viewed. Right. And I think if there was one that was done that was more community-based, it would be even better received.
I would hope so. Just the only thing is that, like, again, the production would be down, and we'd have to work with what we have, and we'd have no money. And so in that factor, it would be a charity event, and that's something that I would plan for. To answer your question a little bit more, I would probably, hopefully, be able to create some sort of charity event where the people who are participating in, people who are commentating, people who are a part of it, are just there to be a part of the world race in some way and offer some good out of it. And that's the only thing that we would be able to provide, and I think that's actually not too bad. That's the main difference.
Yeah, I don't mean to bash everything about the event. I actually really enjoyed the event. As I mentioned when it was going on, it was a lot of fun, I think, for everyone that was involved. I think for the most part, everyone was glad they did it. What I thought the greatest thing that we could take away from it for next time is we kind of have a skeleton now.
Yeah.
Of how you can operate an event like that to some success. And I think if, you know, we put our own community's spin on it and focus on it, I think it will deliver what people are looking for in a stream like that, maybe even better, despite being, as you know, as you're calling it, less production.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I mean, you and I used to talk about this all the time, but like when you're watching a prog fight for the first time, specifically in like World First Prog, or when you're watching a World First Clear video or something, say you didn't get to participate in the prog and you just want to watch the fight for the first time, when you get to those new phases, and specifically those hidden phases on the final bosses, and the new BGM kicks in, that's a hype moment.
Yeah.
And you want to hear that, right? I don't want to hear, you know, lo-fi EDM hits number 43 playing on on the Method server's background.
Right.
I want to hear that new BGM in the fight, and stuff like that is a struggle. But somebody like yourself, Frosty, is going to understand that BGM needs to be there,
right?
And the viewers are going to want that BGM there. So even something like that is not going to cost a lot of money in production for you to set up, and it's going to be a higher quality product.
Right. I mean, there is still a big project to consider because, I mean, you need lots of people involved. You need backups. For example, if a person who is scheduled to stream, there should be someone else that could take over the stream and know how to do it, too. So
Cleese doesn't have to stay up for 2 days straight.
Oh, God. Yeah. I think we're going through those hours, and man, what was it? The Cleese did a lot of just, like, again and again and again. He kept putting in a whole bunch of hours, like, back to back. I think I did, 20-something hours on that show?
I think you and Cleese did over 20. I was right behind, and then you had, everyone else for their scheduled shifts. There was a bit too much overtime.
Yeah, it was too much. We weren't also expecting it to go into day 2. We were doubtful that would happen. So, I mean, we need to be expecting that. And of course, I had to redo the schedule all on the fly. I had to try to reprogram my website on the fly. I had to do like everything there in the moment because all the communication just broke down. It was horrible. But I think if we had like a handful of people rotating out for streaming and just say, hey, look, the next day or 2, can you be dedicated for these hours to stream?
I can tell you that the expectation, at least on my end, is that the next tier will go to day 2.
Really?
I think that's a given. Yeah, they have a policy essentially now, ever since Stormblood, of progressively making each tier harder after the last one. They want to start the expansion with the easy one and then ramp it up in difficulty.
I'm the opposite mind. I think that they would take it down.
Easier?
Yeah, because so many people are having trouble with it. With Shiva, I think that they're going to take it down instead.
They could change it up, but
I mean,
the expectation is 2 days, I think. 3 is a possibility, but I wouldn't expect the final one of the expansion to be done in a day.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been around for a couple months. Are the Shiva clear rates not satisfactory to them?
I did Party Finder 2 months ago. So right after the event happened, I kind of went into that whole like, oh crap, I got to go on hiatus. I am completely overloaded. And so I didn't even finish the tier after it came out. And I had to go back really late. And I think maybe in July, early July, end of June, I was trying to clear. And it was one of the worst experiences trying to clear Shiva in Party Finder. I have never had as much trouble, and we were just talking about that. I didn't get a clear until I was in a group with Arthas and some other people from his stream jumped in. Because to find people who can at least be consistent enough to let you see other mechanics and learn more was like, I join a party and there's a 1 in 10 chance I'm getting past light rampant.
Yeah. If you want to Party Finder prog, you have to get in early. There's no other way. All the good people who are going to clear the fight will do so soon, and then you're just left with the people who haven't, or the people who come in late. So like the overall quality of Party Finder progression just deteriorates rapidly after the first month, I'd say.
And I think that's kind of the thing that I'm imagining is that they want to create difficulty depending on Party Finder. But then again, I don't know how Party Finder went for the JP servers, which I think I will say I think they give more focus on the JP servers than they do on the NA servers because it's easier to see that data, understand that data, and understand what's going on with the players there. But I don't know. If they were having a hard time over in the JP data centers, I would think that it would be easier because that's what they do. I mean, that's what they did in Heaven's Word, or that's what I thought they did in Heaven's Word, is that it was really hard, and they were like, oh, screw it, we got to go down, and they kept going down until they hit Creator.
So here's a question I have for Sfia. And this may seem like an off-topic question, but it's not. When you're looking at a week 1 Shiva versus progging T for the first time,
yeah,
of the 2 DPS checks, which one did you feel was harder?
Week 1 Savage, both Titan and Shiva are always harder DPS checks.
Okay, that's what I expected the answer was going to be.
Yeah.
So, knowing that, do you really anticipate that the week 1 tuning of the 3rd tier is going to be any different?
I don't think it's going to be tuning-wise different. It's probably going to be similar, because Titan was pretty similar to Shiva. A lot of people are on that Enrage grind, instance memes aside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that tuning is probably going to stay very similar. They also said that they intentionally tuned Titan down a fraction. Which, when you compare like a 1340 kill time to the 1404 Shiva and Rage, they're pretty similar. If you account for that slight tuning down of Titan. So I'm assuming they're going to keep that DPS check in line with those two fights. What they tend to do is make them more mechanically complex as they go through.
I like, and I agree with you. I think that the difficulty with the DPS should stay where it's at because it's a progression thing. When you get gear, it's not really that difficult anymore. It's just
any harder of a DPS check in the final floor would be a big gate until week 3.
You start pressing on topics like gear walls at that point, or at least composition walls. We could talk about. But
you would essentially have gear walls for certain groups that don't do enough damage.
Yeah, and I think this is an important conversation to have. That the week 1, it's important that they don't undertune week 1 clears too much, because of what Frosty just said, the gear progression, and as you get gear throughout the tier, it shouldn't make the fight embarrassingly easy.
Mm-hmm.
It should make it clearable for the majority of people attempting it, the more gear you have.
Right. The non-optimal players who kind of go in, and they're pretty decent, but they're not awesome.
Yeah.
That's kind of, in my eyes, that's always been the purpose of gear progression in this game, at least since, I don't know, mid Heavensward. That's been how it's played out. You have your fights that are tuned at the very baseline for the gear that you attempt it with week 1, for very DPS focused strategies, and then you can kind of back off of those strategies to maybe some easier pug friendly strategies the more gear you acquire. So they need to be really careful about tuning the next tier. Not like if what you're saying is true, that the Shiva clear rates are not to their satisfaction, they need to, like Sfia said, approach it mechanically and not numerically.
That's absolutely what I think they'll do.
So one of the problems with the gear progression you were talking about is that crafted gear exists now. So we're limited to 20 eye levels of gear progression within a patch, as opposed to the 30 would have if crafted gear didn't exist.
Do you think that
if they completely removed crafted gear and tuned around really tough to kill in last tier's BIS fights, not only would they have more engaging, more a reason to actually farm last tier's BIS, but you'd also have a way more noticeable gear progression as you got items week after week after week. Only having 20 eye levels of improvement that you can have, as well as Pentamelded 480 is actually better than 480. It's more like 485 or 487 or something like that. You limit the amount of room that you've actually got to improve with just gear. So if you had 470 this tier as an example, being the baseline that you went in, you had no crafted gear. The only upgrades you could get were drops that were 500 or tome pieces that were 490 that you would then upgrade to 500. Those upgrades would be far more significant than going from a 480 piece to a 500 piece. So you'd feel better about getting loot. You would notice the change, and every single piece of loot would more drastically help your chances of clearing, as opposed to a slight increase in every slot.
So, is it a crazy opinion for me to have that crafted gear should not be available day 1? Am I too far gone?
I absolutely agree.
I
think crafted gear should come in in the 0.5.
I was going to ask you guys what you thought about this, but just thinking in some way how crafted gear plays out with everything, do you think that they balance the content with crafted gear, full sets of crafted gear, and say if you can clear it with full sets of crafted gear? So that's kind of their hey, here is the baseline to clear it. Everything else is just going to help you out a little bit. And so that's why they have to put it in, because if they don't put it in, then maybe you won't have the gear to clear it.
I believe they've even gone on record in an interview saying that crafting gear is for the cutting edge players to chase kills week 1.
Okay. Well, that would
going
make sense.
Below crafted gear on final fights is frustrating. It just becomes crit farming. Not fun.
Yeah, I can imagine. And now direct hit too, right? So I guess talking about the race, and we talked a bit about how they're going to balance the difficulty and everything else. But I mean, going back to kind of Final Fantasy XIV's world race scene and everything else, we are in the longest lull possible that we've experienced in quite a while, because we were all hoping that we had that ultimate to kind of tie us over, but we didn't. And so now we're going to, maybe in 2 months from now, get into the next race.
Couple months out.
I'm wondering how many, you guys know this better than I do, how many teams are still out there for the race?
My assumption is that most of the teams that you saw at the top of the leaderboards last time are still together. I know that Silink is still running together. I know that they're aiming to compete again in 5.4. I know my team is competing. I know Tempest. I know a bunch of teams that were the top performing ones in Eden's Verse are still around. But lots of teams during this time have taken breaks.
Yeah.
Which absolutely every team has kind of had to, right? But it's been so long. And
I mean, even your team took a break. I think most teams, it's impossible to go from 5.2 to 5.4 without having taken some sort of break.
Well, so long as they don't take a Layla break, it's fine, right?
Yeah, but they always come back.
It's true. All right, so we think that the world race scene is going to be pretty much with the same people. Maybe a couple of new players. The thing I love Savage Races so much, and I'll keep saying this every single time, because how accessible it is to people to join in and be a part of it.
I hate Savage Races. It feels really out of your hands when you're in there.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Sfia, you were directly involved in the last Savage Race. I was not. I want to know, and this might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but this is MogTalk where we ask the hard questions, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Lay it on me.
I want to talk about the JP team Silink, because maybe it was my ignorance, but for me, them stealing the top spot in the last tier was a shocker. Now, we've seen their performance since Shiva, and it's been very positive. What are your expectations for them going into next tier, and how, I guess, are you preparing for the competition of next tier?
I mean, essentially all that we can do is focus on what we did wrong. Looking at other teams is only good in what you can take from them to improve yourself, as opposed to being scared of the big bad JP team. Right? The reasons that we lost, we're all very, very aware of and actively have worked on for months now. But that said, Silink have been running a lot. But they've been running with a roster of like 16 players or something and just cycling people in for all their speed kills. So in terms of how that helps their progression, they're going to be really damn good at pushing their buttons. But whether or not they're a strong team collectively could be another matter. And we have no way of knowing how they function in that situation.
To me, it adds a really kind of fun narrative to the next tier. Because, we have two almost guaranteed contenders, and after I think this long content drought, we've talked about how there's been a lot of teams that have taken a break. I wouldn't be surprised if this amount of time has also sort of bred new teams also. They're going to be participating in Savage next year. So I think there's going to be a large amount of participation next year.
Yeah. I also think that people wanting to hardcore prog is becoming way more popular. There's a lot of people, like even just on Twitter, you see looking for hardcore group, want to blind prog, want to do day 1, day 2, 16 hours. And it's people that, like, when you've world prog for 4 years, you know virtually everyone in the scene. You know every name of every team that's been competitive. And it's new names popping up now. I think more than I've ever seen before, which is really cool.
So I'm going to, again, I went on hiatus. I wasn't actually too involved or know too much about Silink after the race. So they've been a big part of the community afterwards and talking to people and everything, or are you just in their logs?
They essentially did what they did last year as well, where they wait until right before the FF logs cut off and then just dump all their logs and shit on everyone. But another JP team did that to them and beat them in every single fight.
Oh, really?
Which was, yeah. But essentially, what they were and what we knew them as before they showed up and just did really, really well in Eden's Verse was they were a speed kill group. And they just went into fights and killed them as fast as possible. So it made sense that they did really, really well in one of the hardest DPS check fights that we've had in progression, which was Shiva. But yeah, in terms of that preparation, speed killing is absolutely valuable. We've done, I think, our fair share now. where we don't feel like we're at a disadvantage to them in that regard. But it isn't the be-all and end-all of what makes a good prog team.
Yeah, figuring out hearts and cats and lures and stuff is actually pretty vital too.
Yeah, the problem-solving part is probably the big one. Final Fantasy is literally like piecing together puzzles.
Yeah. Stuff like Uru, especially, like the ultimates, they like to throw these little things in there.
Yeah, I mean, speed killing helps you like reach that you must be this tall to prog, and once you're, you know, able to pass that threshold, I think the focus, I think like Sfia said, should be on the creativity and your ability to problem solve in a timely manner.
So, I won't even mention this before I forget about it. The biggest thing, the whole world race scene for me is all just, it's all loosely like just community based and searching out information and trying to put it together. There's nothing like really hardcore, like official, like, stuff that's out there. And so when I find out people clear, a lot of the JP teams just find a random tweet somewhere. It just comes out, hey, I cleared. And we go off this information, put a little bit of validation into it, and figure out, okay, well, they've cleared. The issue I usually have is when a lot of JP teams are like competing and going first and going so on, is I have no communication with them ever. And it's so much more difficult for me to track. So for me, I'm always secretly hoping NA, NU are just going to bash it, go crazy, and just clear all these times, and then I can talk to them and figure out things. So with them being a part of the race, when we're talking about maybe streaming and all this other stuff, they're going to be the least interactive with the actual race, which is sad, even if they win, right?
The known teams now from JP that are still around, like we have access to them now, or we can communicate with them just through Twitter. Like
right.
Google Translate is a godsend.
Yeah.
So those sorts of things wouldn't be so bad, but JP teams do have a tendency of just coming out of the woodwork with obscene teams that are ridiculously good and just surprising everyone.
Yeah.
It's happened so many times where they've just like a team that nobody expected, even knew was competing, has placed top 3. So yeah, expect that. And I'm sorry that it makes your job so hard.
It's a little rough. Because honestly, funny thing is, there's probably JP teams that clear really quick, and if they don't get first, they won't even say that they cleared it, or they won't make it public. And I always love it when I think this happened a couple of races where someone came and it's like, oh yeah, so and so claimed world second JP team, but they didn't post anything. All right, well they didn't get world second. I mean that's it.
So did you know that in UCOP, the team that won it, the JP team, they formed under the assumption that if they hadn't seen the end of the fight by the end of the first week, or someone else beat the fight before them, they disband.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah. That's
wow. Okay.
That's probably the mentality of a lot of those sort of groups, where it's just like either we win, if we don't look like we're getting close, we'll just call it, whatever.
Yeah, team no name.
Yeah.
I remember that. And they wouldn't even give, I think, Yoshida a name to put on there and say who they were. It was a weird situation. But I mean, another thing is with the world race is that it's one of those things that has allowed me to work a lot more globally with the community, because there are people on the JP end that do talk to me and are part of the world race, and they sign up and they're like, hey, I'm actually trying to place decently in the world race, and we communicate through Google Translate and everything else, and they might not make first, but they're active in it. But the really, really good JP teams, they just don't give a shit about me, man. Yeah.
What we need is to find the JP version of Frosty, and then you two got a collab.
Yeah.
So that he gets all the information.
That's a brilliant idea.
And then you get all the information on the side, and you just
Who is
merge.
JP Frosty?
I don't know.
Oh man, we need to find him.
Yeah.
We need to find him. I need a counterpart, because that would make my life so much better. Arthas is my JP counterpart, baby.
I'm so sorry.
I made him come on for a show and translate for me. Which show was that? That was the what was the name of their team? Hororo and
5150.
Yes. Yes, when I had the show with them, he came on and did translation. They are amazing. Those are the people, like, I love that team so much. And, I mean, it's not the same thing anymore. But, yeah, if you guys, anyone listening to the show knows another person who monitors and watches the world race as intently and insanely as apparently I do, I would love to be in contact with them in some form or fashion. I think there's some news organizations, but not like a single person. Right.
So 5150 and UCOB Prague kind of opened the floodgates to Prague streaming, I think, in Final Fantasy. They had such huge amounts of success through that.
So, that being said, that leads me into a good question, Sfia. How's your group considering streaming this next?
I don't think that it's been raised yet.
Okay.
I'm personally of the opinion that a world first on stream is like the final frontier of Final Fantasy XIV. That's,
okay.
That's the goal that I want to achieve at some point, but I don't think that my team would ever want to do that. And as soon as one person doesn't want to stream, it's just like, nah.
I mean, absolutely, conversation ends because you don't want to push it, right?
Yeah.
Because you need a happy team.
Yeah, it's like, it's not something that we're comfortable with. I'm fine either way, but I don't think we will, is my kind of... This isn't for certain or anything. We haven't even discussed it. This is just a feeling that I get.
Okay.
But it's probably a discussion we'll have. But you should probably expect streams from Oriza's team, who is, by the way, really, really good.
Yep.
They did so well in Verse, and they're like... They're a team to actually be worried about taking like podium spots.
Yeah.
Consistently.
I love Oriza and his team. They're amazing.
I mean, I had a lot of fun casting their Prague even. But I think what's really important for the teams that stream is that, how should I put this? A lot of them they're just not interested in expectations. They just want to Prague for the fun of it and share the experience with viewers. And I'm hesitant to like put expectations on groups that do stream just because, well, it is an uphill battle, first of all. But second of all, for a lot of them, it's not really the purpose of why they're doing it, right? A lot of them couldn't care if they're first, second, or third. They're just streaming just because it's an enjoyable way to share their Prague experience. And I think that having that mentality, especially if we're talking about doing future events, having that mentality when we're trying to bring people into events like those is the approach that we should try to emulate. Making it less of a competition and more of a Prague event and atmosphere that we can share.
Yeah, and I mean, that conversation has come up quite a bit about even the naming of it as the world race is kind of, it puts that extra pressure on there. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it is people are racing to clear it as fast as possible, and so it's what it is. But I mean,
just getting semantics about what does race mean and stuff.
But
let's not go down that rabbit hole.
I do agree with Layla 100%. The people that we want to stream and be a part of the event are the people who want to be a part of it. I think twisting anyone's arm or trying to convince them in any way or shape is stupid. Because then if you ever have... Same thing with bringing people onto the show. If I have to force them to come on the show, they're not going to have a good conversation and they're going to hate it, right? But if they want to stream and they want to show everyone their Prague and everything else, and they're going to be excited for it, everyone's going to be amped up for getting them, for them getting the clear, then that's what we would want to show. But then again, we can't also stream for a week, waiting for a team on stream to clear.
Yep. No. I'm really interested to see how long the next Ultimate takes.
Which that's really far away.
5.5 are you talking about?
Yeah. Which would be March-ish, I think. Is the guess?
Ooh, I mean, you're expecting what, November 5.4?
Yeah.
Like early November, most likely?
Mid to late November.
Really, that late?
And then you'd have,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, while we're talking about what we're doing for, and hopefully you're part of that, Layla, depends on if you join a team or not before the race starts, like other people have already. But
my interest is in Prague. Like I'm not really interested in anything else. I just like being a part of Prague, and if being a part of an event like that is the best way for me to do that, then that's what I'd want to do.
There you go. We'll see maybe we'll make something happen with that. But I wanted to lead that off into this event wouldn't translate to Ultimate the way that Method did their raids and everything else with week-long events. I don't think I personally could dedicate weeks to watching the Ultimate race.
You'd have to have like essentially a recap segment every night where you stream for 4 hours and go over footage that has been seen and things like that. Would be the way that I could see it working, unless you had a lot of people willing to put in time for you.
I think that's what it was. That I was going to say is if we did anything going into Ultimate, it would be kind of recapping and kind of going over, oh, these are the strategies, this is what we're seeing used and everything else, and having these analytic conversations every single night. That would be possible, just not a 24/7 like the Savage Race is. I assume you're that makes sense, right, Layla?
Yeah, I was actually trying to play through that in my head, how that would work out logistically. It's definitely an option. I don't think we should sign any dotted lines on anything right now. But that's
I mean, the contract has to be signed, Layla.
No, I don't think that's the right idea.
Right. So we'll see how it comes and how we deal with it. But I think definitely this next one is something that is going to be pretty exciting because it's the first one we've had in a while. And I do want to create some sort of stream. And, of course, the only people I will stream and restream are people who would want me to restream their stream and would say, yeah, I'm okay with that and everything else. Of course, we will focus on the people on that list that are the furthest, unless if we're, they're kind of stuck on something and go back. But we learned a lot from Method Stream. I think so. I mean, just at least being able to go through that experience, there's a lot that I think fine-tuned what we can do going forward in the future. Wouldn't you agree, Layla?
I 100% agree. I actually think that it was a very positive. I mean, it had its hiccups that you could spend another hour talking about. But I think the positives probably outweighed the negatives. And it was a lot of fun, I think, for most people involved, as long as you didn't like sleeping.
So I killed myself over that event, and I will say that.
You did too much. I will let you know, as your friend, you did way too much.
There
was
should no way
ever have to do that again.
But here's the thing, like, especially with the planning and setup, if I wasn't there, I don't know if the event would have happened.
It would. Yeah. It would not have. It would not have.
Because there's just so much logistics that they didn't work out, and I worked out for them because nothing was being done. It was just silence. I'm like, what about this? What about this? And, I had to go in there and basically run it. I at least know what it's like to run the event because I've already done it.
And that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's the positive that you can take away from all this. You now have the skeleton backdrop of what to do and what not to do.
Right. And so that's going to be exciting to see how we do it. And I want to see who we can get involved with the next event. And hopefully, we just do a charity event, knock it out, and have a great time for a couple of days. I'll take off a couple of days of work for it, and it'll be great.
Yeah. Sfia will be there. It'll be great.
I will be.
Yeah, he will be. In some way or form or fashion. So we are in the last couple of minutes before we have to cut the segment off and then go into our next one. I do want to go ahead and reiterate that I love both of you guys. You're wonderful people, and it means a lot that you guys come on MogTalk and give us these awesome perspectives that I wouldn't have otherwise.
I know it's September, Frosty, but please just try to keep it in your pants a bit.
I mean, maybe I don't have pants on. Who knows? That being said, I do want you guys to have a second here to go ahead and do shout outs and say things to people, whatever you want to say in the last few moments of this segment. And I'll start with you, Sfia, if that's okay.
What is this, just closing statements?
Just closing statements. Whatever you want to say. If you want to say thanks, Mom, for the sandwich, or whatever you want to say.
Just shout outs to my team, my FC, my stream. You'll rock. Everyone should try and blind prog fights in Final Fantasy XIV. Please. You'll love it. Yeah. Even if it's not world prog, even if it means that you don't watch Twitter or streams for a day, get in there and do things blind. It is immensely more fun.
I absolutely agree. All right, Layla.
I'm recruiting for my Baldesian Arsenal 2.0 60-man static. You can submit applications in my Twitter DMs. Message me before 4.4. Besides that, shout out to Frosty, number 200, dude. That's a lot of damn episodes, brother.
Thank you, man.
And it's always really fun to come on and hang out with you. And you've always got great guests to pair alongside. It's a lot of fun. I don't get to hang out with Sfia as much as I want to these days. So shout out to Sfia, too. Hope that he and his team do well next year.
Yo, Shadowlands soon, dude. We'll be gaming.
I mean, not if Final Fantasy Prog has anything to say about it, but
true.
In closing, run light party content, speedrun dungeons. I'm out.
Okay. I do want to say maybe, in the future we'll come back on and we'll do a longer segment because it definitely feels like this conversation could go on for hours and hours. But, I'm trying to keep it in nice little bite-sized moments here for episode 200, and we'll see how that goes. Maybe when we're getting closer to the world race, we need to start bringing that back up again. But, all right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you very much for the guest. We'll be back here in about just 15 minutes. We have some wonderful music for you to listen to from the community. I will be replaying some tracks that you heard earlier within the show. If you've been watching all day, you might start to rehear them. But that being said, hang out for just a moment more. We'll be back with actually Feast Conversation, which is another passion of mine. So everybody say bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Well, you can't even wave, Layla.
I'm waving.